Hi everyone, it's Mr. Howe here with another video and another recipe of how to make mac and cheese using a cheese sauce. Now this cheese sauce could be used, in this case pasta, but could be used for something like cauliflower cheese. So what you're going to need for this recipe is 150 grams of cheese, you're going to need 30 grams of butter and 30 grams of plain flour. You're also going to need 500 milliliters of milk and 250 grams of your chosen pasta. You're also going to possibly need salt, pepper, onions and mustard to add some flavour, but you can use other flavours. And you need a oven-proof dish, balloon whisk and a couple of saucepans. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to add your pasta to some boiling water. Now I've got some pan of boiling water and I've slightly salted it, and I'm going to put that on in the background and cook it on a medium to high heat. Now, to start my cheese sauce, I'm going to need to make a roux, and a roux is a French word for a sauce that's made from fat and flour. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my butter, and I'm going to melt it down. Now you can see I'm speeding this up just for the sake of the video, otherwise you're going to be here for a very, very long time watching me melt butter. So I'm going to wait till my butter is melted, and then once my butter is melted, I'm going to add my flour. Now the flour is the part that's actually going to make our sauce nice and thick. So we want to add our flour, but the first thing we want to do with our flour is we want to cook out the flour. And this is important because we don't want a really floury taste to our sauce. We want it to be flavoured with cheese, and we want to have a really nice soft and silky texture. So we're going to mix the flour into the butter, and we're going to cook out the flour using a high heat. You also notice that I'm using my balloon whisk to do this job, and this is so I can break up the bits of flour, and the balloon whisk is going to be really important when I start adding the milk, because it will take out the lumps in our sauce and it will keep our sauce nice and smooth. Now I think I'm at the point where my flour is cooked out, and this is the point where I'm going to add my milk. Now I'm going to add a bit of milk at a time, just enough to cover the bottom of the pan, and then I'm going to use my balloon whisk very, very slowly to start off with in the middle of the pan, and I'm going to slowly incorporate the flour and butter mixture into the water, into the milk, and you will see that the milk starts to get absorbed by the flour and it turns into like a thick paste. We want to keep going until all the milk is incorporated into that mixture, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit more milk, and we're going to repeat this process until all the milk has soaked into the flour mixture and becomes a nice thick white sauce. So again, I'm going to start moving slowly from the middle, and then after probably about 5 to 10 seconds the milk will start to join the flour, and this process is called gelatinization, and it is the process of the starch thickening the sauce. And what you can do as well, you can use the bottom of your whisk to make sure you get into the corners of the pan and make sure you get all the flour off the surface of the pan. Make sure everything is incorporated. Don't get impatient by adding all the milk in at once. It's really important we add a small amount in, and as you get towards the end of the process, you'll be able to add a little bit more milk because the mixture will become nice and smooth. Okay, now you're coming to the end of your mixture. You can add the remaining milk, and you can whisk in the remaining milk. Now it might look quite loose to start off with, but we still need to add our cheese, and our cheese will add a little bit of thickness to our sauce, but we're going to keep that on a very low heat in the background while we prepare our cheese. I'm just going to give it a stir. And then while we prepare our cheese, we're just going to allow that to cook on a low heat. If we have the heat too high, our sauce will start to burn. Now I'm going to cut my cheese into small pieces. Now you can grate your cheese if you want to, but cutting it into smaller pieces is absolutely fine because the heat from the sauce will melt the cheese. Try and keep all the chunks to be relatively the same size so they cook at the same speed. Okay, give the sauce another quick stir while it's been cooking in the background, and then you're going to add your cheese. And when you add your cheese, you want to take your pan off the heat or on a very, very low heat, because if you have it on too high, the fat from the cheese will start to swim around in the top of your sauce, and it's not very nice to see. And the heat from the sauce will just cook and melt that cheese really slowly, and then you'll get a nice smooth cheese sauce. Now you don't have to use cheddar cheese, which is what I've used in my recipe. You could use other types of cheese. You could use a Parmesan, which would be really strong. You could experiment with other cheeses. You could use a Stilton if you wanted to, but I've just used cheddar because it's readily available, and it's the most common type of cheese that we usually find in our fridge. I'm just going to add a little bit of mustard powder for flavour. Now you could use other flavour, you could use different types of curry powder, you could maybe have a dollop of mustard in there as well, and I'm just going to add a little bit of pepper. Now I'm not going to add any salt because the cheese itself will have salt in it, and I believe that the salt from the cheese will season my sauce enough. However, if I wanted to at the end, I will try it, and if it needs a little bit more seasoning, I would add some salt to it. So I'm going to mix it all together, and I'm just going to put it to one side so it can slowly melt the cheese until I'm ready to combine it with my pasta. So now my pasta is cooked. I'm going to drain my pasta using a colander, being really careful not to splash anything onto me, and then I'm going to combine my pasta with my cheese sauce. Now again, like the cheese, you don't have to use the pasta I've used. You could use different types of pasta. It has exactly the same effect, but I would stick to pasta shapes rather than the strands like spaghetti and tagliatelle, especially if we're going to be putting it in the oven, because it's easier to serve and it's easier to eat. So once my sauce is ready, now a really good trick to find out if your sauce is ready is if you get a spoon and drag your finger through the back of the spoon, you will see that the liquid doesn't actually move. Now this is a really nice thickness, and it's a really good viscosity, which means that it's the desired thickness that we want. We don't want it too thick, we don't want it too runny. To add a little bit of texture to my sauce, I've added some onions. Now you don't have to add onions, but I just like the texture and I like the taste. I think cheese and onion works really well. And I'm just going to add my pasta to my pan, and then I'm going to mix it with a large serving spoon before I decanter it into my oven-proof dish. So I'm just going to take a big spoon, get my oven-proof dish ready, and I'm going to mix my pasta all up. Now you can do this two ways. You can serve your spoon by spoon, and it's probably the less messy way. However, if you feel like it's taking too long, you can just tip up the pan. Okay, finally for my dish, I'm just going to sprinkle some breadcrumbs over the top. Now you can buy breadcrumbs from most supermarkets and even some corner shops. If you haven't got any breadcrumbs, you can blitz some breadcrumbs, but you could also put some cheese on the top. You could also put some Parmesan on the top. It doesn't really matter what you do on the top of your pasta. You can keep it as it is. I just like to put some breadcrumbs just to add that extra texture and that extra layer Okay, and that's going to go in the oven for 25 minutes at 180 degrees. And there you are, guys. That is your mac and cheese using a homemade cheese sauce using the roux method. Let me know how you get on. Hope you had fun trying, and I will speak to you guys soon.